LeBron.
I think even dating back to when LeBron made the announcement and the Lakers started signing guys, we talked about it on the pod, we talked about it off air. What in the world is Magic Johnson doing? Why is he signing these guys? They are not guys that fit around LeBron. And he even said, like, oh, we're going to do things different than they did in Cleveland. Really? It seemed to work pretty well. He went to a lot of finals. I mean, it wasn't like it was a complete failure. They weren't missing the playoffs.
They weren't even that far away the first couple of finals with the Warriors. I mean, the last couple, yeah, I understand with Durant there, but the first couple, you know, they won one, and they could have won more games in the other one. It just didn't play well down the stretch. But, yeah, they weren't that far away.
Yeah, it wasn't like Cleveland's blueprint was completely in left field. They were pretty successful with it. And now all of a sudden, you're like, oh, we're not going to do that. We're not going to put defense and shooting around LeBron. We're just going to bring a bunch of tough guys in. We're just going to beat the Warriors up. Why are you bringing in Rondo, a ball-dominant point guard, when you already have Lonzo and you have no plans at that point to trade him? And then you bring in JaVale McGee, and then you go out and you get Tyson Chandler, and you're bringing in these old big guys that can't even play now because you're trying to save them for the playoffs.
And it's not even a center's league anymore.
Lance Stevenson, Michael Beasley, they didn't even bring in any shooting. And then they're trading someone like Zubac, who is a young asset for them, to get shooting in Muscala. And it's not even going to matter at this point because they're going to basically need one of these teams in front of them to have a pretty significant injury to even have a chance. And they may need 3 or 4 teams to have some significant injuries to have a chance. To me, it feels like I don't know what they were trying to do. I don't know if they were trying to load up on guys in 1-year deals that made them all expendable, that they could include that expiring contract in a deal for a star. I don't know if that behind the scenes is what they were trying to do in order to utilize their cap space, then be able to have the flexibility to send a Rondo or a McGee or a Beasley or a Lance to a team like the Pelicans to just throw it in to make the salaries work. I don't know if that was their plan, but Eric, right off the get-go, it just didn't seem like a team that was going to work out. Now, through the first part of the year, it seemed like maybe they have something here. But then all of a sudden, when you start throwing all these guys out there, we talk about coaches not ready for it. Eric, a lot of these young guys on this team, from Ingram to even Lonzo, I mean, LeVar lost his mind when all this stuff happened. Kuzma, these guys aren't used to just being chucked in trade talks all the time. And it's not going to be easy for guys basically to be out there. And then not only are you out there, you're getting crushed. People are sitting there saying, well, you know what? These 6 guys, they're not even good enough to get Anthony Davis. You're not even good enough as a unit to get one guy, all 6 of you, or however many they were going to put in a deal. That's got to mess with these guys' psyche.
Absolutely.
That just derailed this entire season. So I put a lot of this blame on the front office. I put a lot of this on the fact that despite what they say, you know, behind the scenes, either in the beginning of the year or at some point before Rich Paul came out publicly and said Anthony Davis wanted to trade, LeBron was very aware of what's going on. He can't play it both ways. He can't play dumb, and then he goes into a press conference after he drafts All-Star, and he talks about 13 guys' contract situations. You can't have it both ways. You can't do that, LeBron. I know you try to play both sides, but you just can't do it. He obviously knows these contract situations, and the guys that are with Clutch, he knows very well. And, of course, Rich Paul's going to know. So they had this going on behind the scenes. Hey, let's go out and try to make this push. We've got a ton of assets. We've got all these guys on expirings. We've got picks. We're going to get this thing done. And when the Pelicans didn't do it, the whole thing blew up. And now it's just a mess. Now you're even talking about, or the Lakers going to shut LeBron down. And then what cracks me up, Eric, is the headline on ESPN. I don't know if you saw it, but it was like, LeBron says he's not going to shut it down. He's going to continue to play. And then if you read the article, he's like, well, I'll talk to Luke and we'll talk to Magic and we'll see what works best. It's like, that's not exactly what LeBron said. He didn't come out and boldly say he's not going to stop playing. He basically said he's going to go along with whatever the Lakers say. And frankly, it would be smart for him at this point, because if for some reason...
No, it wouldn't.
So if LeBron goes out and ruptures his Achilles and is out for another 12 months for nothing, I mean, that's where I'm thinking of at his age with what he went through. There's a ton of excuses out there that he's still banged up, that he's not right. If he tears that groin or overcompensating, he tears an ACL, ruptures his Achilles, does something that's a 9 to 12 month injury at his age, his career could be done. He could be a completely different LeBron than we've ever seen, because he might not be right until he's 36. And then where's his skill level going to be at that point? So
it would look like Jordan in a Wizards uniform.
Well, at least he was 40. LeBron looks like Jordan now, and he's 34. So,
oh, come on.
Hey, did you see your boy Kuzma the other night have to throw LeBron out to get him to play some defense?
Yeah, I kind of saw that. But here's the thing. I mean, first of all, the ESPN thing, they know that their main audience, their target audience, only reads the headlines and then makes a decision from there. They're not expecting them to actually read the articles. So that's where ESPN's safe on that. But here's the other thing about LA. In the last 10 games, they're 3-7, and they've lost to teams like Atlanta. They've lost to teams like New Orleans, like Memphis, like Phoenix. They've even lost to teams that they needed to grab a win against, like the LA Clippers. So they're wasting opportunities to get wins that they badly, badly need. They're 6 games out of 8th place in the West right now. They only have 18 games remaining. The golden ticket for them is the fact that their remaining schedule is not very difficult, at least on paper. Now, again, this is the NBA, and from night to night, things don't seem to make sense. Everyone lost their minds when Phoenix beat LA. Oh, the world's falling. LeBron is the worst player ever. And this GOAT talk is all over. And then the Phoenix Suns go out and beat Milwaukee the next night. So no one was panicking that the Bucks lost to the Suns. Either way, out of the remaining 18 games, the Lakers have their easiest stretch out of the next month and a half. They do play a couple of top teams. They do have to play Boston. They've got Denver Wednesday night this week. They do have Toronto. They do have Milwaukee. And then they do have Golden State, and maybe you want to count the Clippers in there. Outside of that, they're going to play teams that are struggling or are very beatable. And so if they're not picking up wins in all of those games, let's say they lose the 6 I just mentioned to the top teams. If they don't win the other 12, they're done. I mean, that's just the math of it, Justin. They've got to make up 6 games on the Clippers and the Spurs. It's just not going to happen unless they win those other 12 games. So that's the golden ticket for the Lakers. They have to look at their schedule and they have to consider that they can still do this, but they've got to win all the winnable games. And that's why I say LeBron is not going to get shut down. He shouldn't get shut down, because how do you quit on your team if you're mainly the reason that this is all happening? That's why I say, even as a LeBron homer, if he shuts it down for the season, I think that's a terrible message. I think the message that they've already sent, because I'm on board with you. They were 4th place in the West before Christmas, right before LeBron's groin injury. Then they kind of go on a little bit of a losing streak when he was out for 18 games. That's understandable. But then during that period and a little after that period too, they offer the rest of their roster, including, I think, 10 box seats to the stadium and probably 3 or 4 sports cars to the Pelicans for Anthony Davis. They say no, and now the rest of the team has to go through the rest of the year knowing that they're worthless. And from that point on, this team just hasn't been the same. And I'm totally in agreement with you on that. I think it's a terrible look. I think it's terrible for LeBron. I think it's terrible for Magic Johnson. And if you're Luke Walton, how are you supposed to coach around that? So I don't think LeBron should shut it down, because he made this mess, so he should have to finish it out.
Well, I don't think he should shut it down now. Let me clarify. I think when they are mathematically eliminated, so let's say it's 6 games to go or 5 games to go, or if they can close the margin, I think he should play up until that point.
Oh, yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that if they are, it's almost like golf in a match play. Once they're done, once they have gotten to the point where it's like, okay, they are mathematically eliminated, that's where I think they should shut him down. No, he should have to suffer through this. Now, at this point, he should have to play with this team and play it out. I just mean that when they get to a point where we just cannot get there, we are eliminated mathematically, then I think he will shut it down. I think the Lakers will shut him down at that point. But no, I don't think now.
I buy that.
Because, Eric, as much as I want to sit here and look at the standings and feel like, oh, God, they're in deep trouble, there is this little part of me that feels like this is some kind of giant conspiracy that's just going to take place where the Lakers are going to go on this run and somehow they're going to get to the AC. I don't know. I just can't shake this thought of like somehow them going 14-4, 15-3 over their last 18 games and somehow getting into the playoffs. That just feels like how the NBA has always seemed to operate. It's not a big percentage of me, but there's a very small percentage that just thinks like it's hard for me to fathom LeBron not being in the playoffs in some capacity. And I just feel like there's this little teeny part of me that like, you know what, if I was in Vegas or it was on my sports app, I would probably take a little bit of money on the Lakers to make the playoffs because it's such a good payout right now because it's you get no odds for them to miss it at this point. That somehow, some way, they'll find a way to get into playoffs.
Yeah, and this is going to sound funny coming from me because I've always said, as far as LeBron's greatest of all time talk, I've always said he's better off going to all of those finals and then having only 3 rings out of it than never having been to the finals at all, because it still means something when you take a team to the finals. I mean, 8 in a row. My goodness. So it's going to sound funny, though, when I say I think the Lakers are better off not making the playoffs if they're going to make the 8th seed, because they're going to get absolutely blown out, swept, and just beaten out of the gym by the Warriors in 4 games. And I'm not sure that looks so good either. So it's a tough situation that they're in. Maybe getting to the 7th seed, since the Spurs and the Clippers are so tight there, would be more of the hope for the Lakers, meaning that they get to go out and play either Denver or Houston. But I don't know if it's even a good idea for LeBron's career to make these playoffs. We'll see what it does. But I think at the end of the season, what's really going to happen, just as we get to that July free agency period, the NBA is just going to line up all of the unrestricted free agents that Clutch has and then let LeBron come pick them like he's picking a dodgeball team. That's probably what's going to happen.
Like it's some kind of modified Bachelor.
Right.
He's just going to hand roses out.
It's ridiculous.
All right, we're going to go in court and play one-on-one and see if you can fit in with me. Can you stand in the corner and can you play defense? That's the 2 boxes you have to check to play with LeBron. Well, we'll continue to watch this Lakers story. Look, they haven't shown anything that they are aiming in the right direction to make a playoff run. It just feels like this little part of me that always feels like there's NBA conspiracies taking place. But that's for, we'll definitely have other shows that we can discuss that and kind of track their progress here over the next few weeks to end the season. But Eric, I talked about at the beginning of this segment, there's a lot of other good stories out there taking place. I want to read you 2 stat lines and then get your take on these guys. So we've got player A. He is averaging 26.7 points a game, 12.4 rebounds, 3.3 assists. Player B is averaging 25.5 points a game, almost 8 rebounds, and 5.4 assists. So I know you've seen the notes, so I'll see if you've paid attention to them. Do you have an idea of who player A and player B are?
Between the 2 of them, no, I don't, and I actually didn't cheat and I didn't look. I know the 2 names you're talking about. But, wow, I think those are pretty good stat lines. I mean, if you said that those were LeBron James's stat lines as a 34-year-old, I'd be pretty happy.
Well, player A is Karl Anthony Towns, the man that Jimmy Butler couldn't wait to get away from. And player B was Blake Griffin, the man who the Clippers couldn't wait to ship to Detroit. But I think it just speaks to the fact that when you talk about the NBA and the storylines that are out there, there are guys like this in Kat and Blake Griffin who are having phenomenal seasons. And really, nobody talks about them. They get very little publicity because the media and the circus that's around LeBron and the Celtics and even the Warriors at times, and a lot of good stories out there are under the radar. And I think guys like, Detroit, for example, they're in the playoffs right now in the East. And it's a lot to do with how Blake Griffin has come in there and played. He wasn't thrilled about being traded there, but he's come out there and played very well for him. And the same with Karl Anthony Towns. Minnesota is hanging in there around the 10th seed. Now they've got some work to do. They're tied with the Lakers in terms of record right now as we record on Wednesday night. But look, there's a lot of really good players in the NBA that just you're trying to figure out, okay, are these guys really good if they're on the big stage? And that's why I really would like to see a team like Minnesota get there to really see, okay, now that Minnesota's got all that drama with Butler behind them, and Karl Anthony Towns has seemed to take his game to the next level and is starting night in, night out to bring it. That seemed to be his biggest thing, is just night in, night out. You didn't know what you were going to get. But, man, he's been fun to watch this year. The same with Blake. And the same with a lot of stories, Eric, that just don't get enough. I mean, you got the Clippers in the playoff race. The Nets are in there in the East. The 2 teams that look like, for all intents and purposes, the Clippers look like they were trying to miss the playoffs, and now they're the LA team that's on a tear right now.
Yeah, and I'd have to give it to Karl Anthony Towns for somehow surviving a bad car accident with really just, minor bumps and bruises. So I think he's having the better year.
Yeah, statistically wise, I think he has. I mean, and again, he's in the West and Blake's in the East, so I think there's a little bit of a easier schedule there, easier road. But the fact that Minnesota sort of hung in there with all the drama that was around them, the way we were talking about this team earlier in the year, then they're bringing new guys in, they get rid of Thibodeau, and the fact that they've hung tough, I think that speaks a lot to this team that, hey, maybe they're not that far out of it. Maybe they can make a few moves. They seem to like the new coach, even though he's a young guy in Ryan Sanders. So maybe they can get it turned around, because I always think the NBA, look, the one thing I miss about the NBA is when you when you have so many stars that are migrating to these few teams, there's a lot of teams that are off the radar. And it's fun when you actually have talent out there that's sort of mixed around. When you have a Giannis in Milwaukee, and right now you got Kawhi in Toronto. When you turn on NBA TV, there's some body that you want to watch. Like, okay, I'll watch this because I want to see what this player looks like. When everybody's on the same